Hollywood had a way of making even the brightest souls forget the sound of their own footsteps. For Dean Martin, the city no longer roared the way it once had. It hummed now like an old record spinning in a quiet room, familiar but softer, layered with memories that refused to fade. That afternoon, he stood alone on the balcony of his hillside home, the sun dipping slowly into the Pacific, staining the sky with gold and bruised violet. The laughter of distant neighbors drifted faintly through the air, but inside him there was a stillness, not loneliness, something heavier, reflection, the kind that crept in only when the world finally stopped asking him to smile. Fame had given him stages, applause, and a voice recognized in every corner of America. But it had also given him ghosts. People. Moments. Promises made in back rooms and alleyways before the lights ever found him. Dean rested his forearms on the rail and closed his eyes, breathing in the ocean's salt air. Somewhere below, traffic murmured like a restless river. He told himself it was just another evening. Another quiet pause between shows. Another chance to unwind. Yet something inside him felt unsettled, as if a chapter he believed finished had quietly reopened without his permission. Inside, the phone rang. It was not the sharp, urgent ring of business, not the confident call of an agent or a studio executive. It was slower, hesitant, almost apologetic. Dean hesitated before answering, his hand hovering over the receiver, as though it already carried a weight he did not want to lift. He said, for a moment, only static replied. Then a breath, uneven, fragile. Dean. It's Ruthie. The name struck him like a forgotten melody. Ruthie Calder, the sister of the boy who once shared his bread. The girl who had lent him her jacket when he had no coat. The last voice he remembered from a time before stages, before contracts, before the world ever cared who he was. Ruthie, he said quietly. It's been years. Yes. Yes, it has. Her voice trembled, and not from age alone. I didn't know who else to call. Dean straightened. Something in her tone carried more than nostalgia. It carried defeat. It's about Tommy, she said. The name landed heavier. Tommy Calder, Dean's oldest friend. The boy who used to harmonize with him behind a bakery. The one who believed in him before he had ever believed in himself. The one who once said with a grin full of hope, if one of us makes it, we both do. What about him? Dean asked. There was a pause so long it seemed the line might die. He's not doing well, Dean, she finally said. Not at all. The sun outside slipped lower, as if retreating from what was about to be spoken. He lost the shop. Then the apartment. Then the car. He's been moving between shelters. Sometimes he sleeps behind St. Bridget's when there's no room. Her voice cracked. I found him last week. He didn't even look like himself. He wouldn't let me bring him home. He said he didn't want me to see him like this. Dean closed his eyes. Tommy, who once polished his shoes so they could sneak into clubs. Tommy, who used to bet his last coins on Dean's voice. Tommy, who had said, one day, people are going to chant your name. The image Ruthie painted did not fit the boy he remembered, and yet he knew better than anyone how quickly life could bend a man without asking permission. Where is he now? Dean asked. I don't know exactly. Somewhere near the old rail district. He drifts. Some days he disappears. Dean felt a slow, unfamiliar pressure behind his eyes. Not tears. Responsibility. Thank you for telling me, he said. I wasn't calling for money, Ruthie rushed. I just thought, maybe if he heard from you, maybe he'd remember who he was. After the call ended, the house felt different. Too quiet. Too polished. The walls carried framed gold records, awards, smiling photographs with men who had never known the sound of hunger. Dean looked around the room and felt, for the first time in years, like a guest. He did not call an assistant. He did not alert his driver. He went to his bedroom and changed into a simple, dark coat, pulled a hat low over his brow, and took the keys himself. As he stepped into the night, he left the gates closed behind him, unaware that he was also closing the door on the man he had been that morning. The rail district lay far from the bright theaters. Here, the streets thinned, the lamps dimmed, and the air smelled of rust and rain. Dean drove slowly, scanning corners, alleys, and loading docks. People moved in clusters near soup lines, some wrapped in blankets, others wrapped only in silence. He rolled down his window and listened. Not for his name. For breathing. For life. At the edge of a shuttered warehouse, he saw a small fire burning inside a steel barrel. 3 figures huddled around it. One laughed. One coughed. The third sat apart, shoulders curved inward, hands extended toward the weak flame. Dean's foot eased onto the brake. Even before he stepped out, he knew it was not the clothes. Not the dirt. Not the beard that had grown without care. It was the way the man leaned forward, as if apologizing to the world for taking up space. "Tommy," Dean said softly. The man did not look up. Dean took a step closer. The heat brushed his face. "Tom," he tried again, slowly. The man raised his head. The eyes were the same, clouded, tired, but unmistakably his. For several seconds, Tommy only stared, his mind clearly wrestling with a picture it did not trust. "Dean," he whispered. Dean nodded once. The barrel popped, sending sparks upward. Tommy laughed, a sound so hollow it barely reached the air. "That's a good one," he said. "You almost had me." "It's me," Dean replied. "I've been looking for you." Tommy shook his head. "You don't belong here." "I belong wherever you are," Dean said. The men by the barrel fell silent. One of them stood, wary. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," Dean said. "Everything is." The man hesitated, then sat back down. Tommy looked away, shame rolling off him like cold rain. "You shouldn't see me like this." "I should," Dean answered. Tommy exhaled, a bitter smile touching his lips. "Funny, I used to imagine this moment. Thought if we met again I'd be wearing a clean shirt. Maybe telling you about some little business I built. Thought I'd be able to say, 'See? We both made it.'" "You did make it," Dean said. Tommy scoffed. "Look at me." Dean knelt in front of him, ignoring the wet pavement, the soot, watching from the dark. "I am," he said. Tommy's voice trembled. "I had a hardware store. 20 years. Then the big chain opened 2 streets down. Then my wife got sick. Then the bills got louder than the customers. Then she passed. Then the shop closed. After that, things just kept leaving." Dean listened. "Not as a star, not as a savior. As a friend, I tried to hold on," Tommy continued. "Tried to be strong like you always said. But after a while, strength gets heavy." Dean nodded slowly. "That's when you're supposed to share it." Tommy looked at him then, really looked. "Why are you here?" Dean's voice lowered. "Because a long time ago, there was a boy who split his sandwich with me when I had nothing. Because there was a boy who told me to sing when I was afraid. Because that boy is still here." Tommy's eyes burned. "You don't owe me anything." Dean reached into his coat and pulled out not money, but an old folded photograph he kept in his wallet. 2 skinny boys in front of a bakery, one grinning like the world had already been won, the other trying to look tough. "You owe me this," Dean said. "You owe me the truth that you're still alive." Tommy stared at the photo as if it were a mirror. "I don't know how to come back," he whispered. Don placed the photo in his hand and closed Tommy's fingers around it. "Then don't," he said. "Just come with me." "Where?" Dean stood slowly. "Somewhere warm. Somewhere clean. Somewhere you can breathe. Tomorrow, we'll worry about the rest." Tommy hesitated, shame and hope colliding across his face. "I don't want pity," he said. Dean shook his head. "You're not getting it? What am I getting?" Dean met his eyes. Time. For a long moment, the city seemed to hold its breath. Then Tommy rose. And in that small, unrecorded movement, something far bigger than either man had just begun, high above them. Beyond the broken lamps and rusted tracks, Hollywood's lights still burned. But for the first time in years, Dean Martin was not moving toward them. He was walking away, and he did not yet realize how much the world would soon be shaken by what he was about to do next. By morning, Hollywood was already asking where Dean Martin had gone. His driver waited outside the gate longer than usual. The studio sent 2 messages. An assistant knocked and received no answer. By noon, whispers were moving faster than facts. Dean Martin did not miss meetings. He did not vanish without word. And yet the house on the hill remained sealed in silence, its polished rooms untouched, its piano closed, its lights off as if the soul had stepped out and forgotten to return. What no one knew was that Dean was sitting on a narrow bed in a small, privately run recovery home near the coast, watching an old ceiling fan wobble as it turned. The room smelled faintly of soap and fresh paint. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't impressive. But it was warm. And across from him, at a small wooden table, Tommy Calder was holding a mug with both hands, staring at the steam like it might disappear if he didn't watch it closely. "You don't have to stay," Tommy said quietly. Dean didn't look at him. He was watching the way Tommy's hands shook, how they steadied only when the mug touched his lips. "I know," he said. Tommy swallowed. "People like you don't belong in places like this." Dean finally turned. "People like me don't belong anywhere until we remember why we started." The director of the home had nearly refused them. Not because of Tommy, because of Dean. He had recognized him immediately. Tried to be professional. Tried not to stare. Tried not to ask for a photo. But Dean had stopped him gently. "This isn't about me," he had said. "If you can't forget who I am, we'll go somewhere else." So the man had agreed. On one condition: no announcements. No press. No special treatment. Dean had accepted without hesitation. Now, as sunlight filtered through thin curtains, Dean realized how long it had been since he had sat in a place where no one wanted anything from him. No autographs. No favors. No performance. Only presence. Tommy finally spoke again. "I almost didn't come with you." Dean nodded. "I know. I was sure you'd wake up and regret it," Tommy admitted. "I was sure you'd hand me some money and disappear back into your world." Dean stood and walked to the window. Outside, the courtyard was quiet. A few residents sat on benches. A nurse watered plants. Somewhere, a radio played low, almost shy. "I did wake up," Dean said. "And the only thing I regretted was how long it took me to find you." Tommy's shoulders tightened. "You don't understand what it's like out there," he said. "Every day teaches you that you don't matter. Every look tells you you're in the way. After a while, you start helping the world forget you." Dean turned fully now. "Then I'm here to remember." That afternoon, instead of returning to the hills, Dean followed Tommy into the common room. He sat with him through intake questions, through medical forms, through the careful, non-judgmental explanations of steps and schedules and support meetings. He listened as Tommy spoke haltingly about his past, his losses, the slow collapse of his sense of worth. Dean did not interrupt, did not correct, did not reshape the story into something prettier. He let it be heavy. By evening, rumors had become concern. By nightfall, concern had become panic. A columnist tweeted. A radio host speculated. Someone leaked that Dean had missed a rehearsal. Someone else claimed he'd canceled a recording session without explanation. And somewhere between gossip and fear, the first false story was born. Then another. Then another. But Dean did not see them. He was sitting beside Tommy in a small circle of folding chairs, listening to strangers speak truths they had hidden from themselves for years. He watched Tommy struggle to find words. He watched him fail. He watched him try again. "I don't know who I am anymore," Tommy finally said into the quiet. "I used to be a husband, a shop owner, a friend. Now I'm just someone people step around." The room remained still. Dean did not speak. Tommy's voice cracked. "I don't even know if there's anything left to fix." Dean leaned forward slightly. "There is," he said. "But fixing isn't the first step." Tommy looked at him. "What is?" "Staying," Dean replied. That night, Dean took the smaller bed in the corner of Tommy's room. The mattress was thin. The blanket smelled of detergent. Somewhere down the hall, a man coughed in his sleep. Another murmured through a dream. Dean lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought of stages, of laughter, of bright suits and brighter rooms. He thought of applause that arrived like a wave and vanished just as quickly. He thought of how many people knew his voice and how few knew his silences. Across the room, Tommy shifted. You awake? He asked. Yes, Dean said. Why are you really doing this? Tommy asked quietly. Not the nice version. The real one. Dean did not answer immediately. He searched himself. Past the easy explanations. Past gratitude. Past nostalgia, because if you disappear, he said slowly, then a part of who I was disappears with you. And I'm not ready to become someone who only exists in photographs. Tommy turned on his side. The room was dim, but Dean saw the shape of his face. I thought making it meant never having to look back. Dean exhaled. Sometimes making it means having the courage too. By the second day, staff members began to notice. Not the fame. The behavior. Dean helped serve breakfast. He stacked chairs. He sat with a man who had not spoken in 3 days and listened until he did. He walked with an elderly resident who needed time to cross the courtyard. He was not performing kindness. He was practicing it, and slowly, people began to change around him. Tommy began to sit straighter. He shaved. He spoke more. He laughed once, surprised by the sound as if it had escaped without permission. But the deeper change was quieter. He started meeting Dean's eyes again. On the third evening, the director pulled Dean aside. Your people have called, he said gently. A lot. Dean nodded. Tell them I'm safe. I won't stop them, the man said. Dean looked back through the doorway, where Tommy was learning how to play chess from a retired teacher who had once lost everything twice. Then let them look. The director hesitated. They will find you, I know. And somewhere beyond the low fence of the recovery home, already were, a photographer caught a glimpse of Dean at a corner store carrying groceries. The image was grainy, crooked, uncertain, but it was him. No jacket, no entourage, no smile for a lens. Just a man holding a paper bag and waiting at a crosswalk. The photo spread quietly at first, then loudly. The headlines were confused. Where has Dean Martin been? A star steps away. Mysterious disappearance ends with stranger sighting. But none of them told the truth, because none of them yet knew it. That night, Tommy sat on the steps outside, the sea wind brushing his face. They're going to find out, he said. Dean sat beside him. About me? About you being here, Tommy said. About me. Dean watched the dark water beyond the trees. Let them. Tommy's jaw tightened. I don't want to be a story. Dean looked at him. Then don't be. How? Be a man, Dean said. Stories only happen when people stop seeing that first. Tommy breathed slowly. I'm scared, he admitted. Dean nodded. Good, Tommy turned. Good. It means something still matters. They sat in silence. Two men suspended between what had been and what might still be. What Dean did not yet know was that the world he had walked away from was already walking toward him. And when it arrived, it would not come quietly, because Hollywood was about to discover that Dean Martin had not vanished. He had chosen, and that choice was going to shake far more than headlines. The first black car appeared just after sunrise. It rolled past the recovery home once, slow and deliberate, before stopping half a block down. The engine remained running. The windows were dark, and though no one inside the building spoke of it, everyone felt the shift, the way quiet spaces do when something unfamiliar presses against their walls. Dean was in the courtyard, helping Tommy repot a dying fern, when he noticed the change in the air. Not sound, a tension, the kind that prickles the skin before the mind understands why. Tommy followed his gaze. They found you, said. Dean did not answer. He studied the soil on his fingers. The small, ordinary task grounded him. Maybe, he said. By mid-morning, the phone in the director's office had rung 12 times. By noon, a second car arrived. Then a third. A producer. A publicist. Someone from a studio. Someone from a newspaper who claimed they only wanted to check in. Dean refused them all. He sat with Tommy in a small counseling room, the door closed, the blinds half drawn. The ticking of a wall clock measured time differently here. Not in money. In breath. They're not going to stop, Tommy said quietly. They never do. Dean leaned back in the chair. Then neither will I. Tommy hesitated. You can't protect me from your world. Dean met his eyes. I'm not trying to protect you from it. Then what are you doing? Standing between it and the part of you that's still healing. I'm exhaled. I don't want to be your charity case. Aideen's voice lowered. Then don't be. Silence filled the space. Tommy finally spoke. They'll make me into something. A symbol. A tragedy. A headline. I don't want to lose myself again. Dean considered him. Then don't give them the story they expect. That afternoon, the director informed Dean that a reporter had offered money to staff for information. Another had taken photos from a rooftop across the street. Someone had called the city pretending to be family, demanding confirmation. They will breach us, the director said. Soon, Dean nodded. Then I should leave. Tommy's head snapped up. No, Dean raised a hand. Not disappear, just move the noise away from you.
Oh.
You think this is noise for me? Dean, this is you, and you're not noise. You're the first steady thing I've had in years. Dean felt the words land, heavy, honest. I won't abandon you, he said. Tommy's jaw tightened. Then don't make this easy for them. Dean thought of stages, of microphones, of the way silence becomes a message when a man who always speaks suddenly dove in single quotes, and slowly, an idea took shape. That evening, Dean made one call, not to a studio, not to an agent, to a small community theater. He had quietly funded years earlier in a coastal town, few people associated with his name. I need a space, he said. One night. No advertising. No tickets for what? The woman on the other end asked. For the truth, Dean replied. When he hung up, he turned to Tommy. They're going to get their story, Dean said, but not the one they're hunting. The day they moved Tommy out of the recovery home, it was done before dawn. No cameras, no sirens. Just Dean's old sedan in the slow coastal road. Tommy watched the building fade into morning light. That place gave me back my mornings, he said softly. Dean nodded. It did its job. Now you do yours. What's that? Live. They reached the town by late afternoon. The theater was modest. Brick. A hand-painted sign. A place where high school plays and traveling musicians usually performed. No velvet. No chandeliers. No history worth stealing inside. Dean walked the stage alone. The wood creaked under his shoes. He closed his eyes. He could still hear the roar of grand rooms. But here he heard something else space. That night, he sat in the first row while Tommy remained backstage, pacing, rubbing his palms against his jeans. I can't do this, Tommy said. You can, Dean replied calmly. No, I can't face them. Whoever you're inviting. I didn't invite them, Dean said. Tommy frowned. Then who is coming? Dean stood. No one. Tommy stared. Then why are we here? Dean placed a hand on his shoulder. Because tomorrow they will come. And I want the first time you step back into the world to be on your terms, not theirs. Tommy's throat tightened. What are you going to do? Dean did not answer. The next morning, single message was sent from Dean Martin's official account. No photo, no explanation, only a time, a town, and the words, tonight. One stage. No performance. By noon it was everywhere. By evening. The town could not contain the traffic flowing toward it. They expected music. They expected an announcement. They expected a return. They did not expect what waited behind the curtain. Backstage. Tommy sat alone, staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. He barely recognized the man looking back. Cleaner, straighter, still scarred, but breathing. Dean entered quietly. "They're here," he said. Tommy swallowed. "How many?" "Enough." Tommy stood. "I don't want pity." Dean nodded. "Then don't give it to them." Tommy's voice shook. "I don't want applause." Dean's gaze softened. "Then don't earn it." Tommy looked at him. "I'm not you." Dean smiled faintly. "Thank God." The murmur of the audience seeped through the walls. Anticipation, confusion, impatience. Dean stepped toward the stage entrance. "What are you going to say?" Tommy asked. Dean paused. "The only thing I haven't said in a long time." He walked out alone. The room stilled. No band, no introduction, no lights beyond a single warm glow. Dean stood center stage. Hands relaxed, face calm. For a long moment, he said nothing, and somehow the silence said everything. "I didn't come here to sing," Dean finally said. "And I didn't come here to be seen." A ripple moved through the room. "I came here because a long time ago, before any of you knew my name, someone knew me." He turned slightly. "And today that someone is here, but not the way you'd expect." Backstage, Tommy's breath caught. Dean continued. "You can decide what kind of people you are tonight. You can be the kind who watches a man, or the kind who meets him." Then Dean stepped aside, and in that space, Tommy Calder walked into the light. The room did not erupt. It froze because the man who stood, there was not a headline, not a scandal, not a spectacle. He was something far more unsettling, human, and in that suspended moment, before a single word had been spoken, Hollywood realized it had followed Dean Martin to the wrong stage, because this one was not built for entertainment, it was built for truth. The silence that followed Tommy Calder's first step onto the stage was not empty, it was charged. Hundreds of people sat frozen in their seats, unsure whether to breathe, unsure whether to clap, unsure whether they were witnessing the beginning of a performance or the interruption of one. Cameras were raised but not yet trusted. Not even the photographers seemed certain what story they were supposed to capture. This was not the polished return they had driven hours to see. This was something raw, unframed, unprepared. Tommy stood in the single pool of light, like a man who had walked out of a long tunnel and was still unsure if the sun would hurt his eyes. He wore no costume. Just a clean shirt, a jacket that did not quite fit his shoulders yet, and the weight of years that no mirror could fully show. His hands were clasped together, not in prayer, but in restraint, as if he were holding himself still long enough to decide whether he deserved to be there. Dean remained, a step behind him, not beside him, not in front, behind. The crowd noticed that detail spread through the room faster than sound. Dean Martin, the man who had stood in the brightest rooms on earth, had placed himself in the shadows. Tommy swallowed. "I don't know why you're here," he began, and his voice carried without effort, because the room was listening the way people only listen when they feel they might be changed. "I don't know what you expected to see." "I didn't either." A faint, nervous breath passed through the audience. "My name is Tommy Calder," he said. "Most of you have never heard it. A few of you might look it up after tonight. I used to own a hardware store. I used to be married. I used to think stability was something you built once and stood on forever." Paused, eyes drifting downward, then lifting again. "I lost those things. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly. The way you lose daylight. One bill, one illness. One closed door. One empty room. And then one morning I woke up and realized the world no longer had a place where I was expected to be." The room remained utterly still. "I didn't come here to ask for help," Tommy said. "I didn't come here to be an example. I didn't even come here to tell you a sad story." He turned his head slightly toward Dean. "I came here because someone remembered me." A murmur rippled, soft and involuntary. Tommy faced forward again. "Before there were cameras. Before there were rumors. Before there were chairs set up in this room. There was just one man standing in front of a barrel fire saying my name like it still meant something. Dean did not move. My life didn't change that night, Tommy continued. It didn't fix itself. It didn't become a miracle. What changed was that I stopped being invisible. He let the words rest, and once you are seen, really seen, you realize you still exist. Somewhere in the darkness, a woman quietly covered her mouth. Tommy inhaled slowly. I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know if it will be big or small. I only know that today, I woke up in a bed. I drank coffee while it was still hot. And I walked into a building because someone expected me to show up. His voice trembled. That was enough to start. Tommy stepped back, not in retreat, in completion. The silence deepened. Then, without cue or coordination, someone stood, then another, then another. Applause did not crash, it rose. Like rain, not wild, not roaring. Honest, Dean waited. He did not step forward when the room responded. He waited until the clapping softened again, until attention returned not to emotion, but to presence. Then he moved. He took 2 slow steps into the light, and for the first time that night, the room exhaled. I spent most of my life learning how to be seen, Dean said. How to hold a room, how to fill silence, how to turn moments into memories people could carry home. He looked across the faces, young, old, famous, unknown, and somewhere along the way, I forgot how to notice who was still standing there when the lights went out. He gestured gently toward Tommy. This man was there, when I had nothing, when my name meant nothing, when my voice shook, when I doubted myself. He didn't build my career. He did something harder. Dean's eyes glistened. He believed I was already someone before anyone else agreed. The room felt smaller now, closer. I did not bring you here to watch me help a friend, Dean continued. I brought you here because I was in danger of becoming a man who only existed when watched. A quiet stir moved through the seats. Fame is a strange house, Dean said. It gives you windows but slowly removes your doors. And one day you wake up surrounded by views and realize you don't know how to leave. He paused. So I left, looked down briefly, then up again, and when I did, I didn't find peace. I found a person. Dean turned fully toward Tommy, and that is what shocked me. Reached into his jacket, not for a check, not for papers, for a simple folded card. This theater, Dean said, holding it up, will no longer host my shows. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Starting tonight, he went on, it belongs to a small foundation that doesn't carry my name. It doesn't carry any famous name. It exists for one purpose only. He extended the card toward Tommy, to help men and women who have lost their place. Build a new one. Tommy stared. Dean's voice softened. Not as recipients. As partners. Director of the theater appeared quietly at the wing. She had tears on her face. This space will be run by people who know what it means to fall, Dean said, and what it takes to stand again. Workshops, skill rebuilding, counseling, small performances, community work, real work, real steps. He looked back at the audience. There will be no branding, no red carpets, no headlines paid for by me. Cameras flashed. Dean raised a hand. Use them if you want, he said. But this place will survive even when you leave. He turned again to Tommy. I can't give you back what you lost, Dean said quietly. But I can give you something I never had when I started. Placed the card into Tommy's hand. A door.
Tommy's?
Fingers closed around it. The crowd rose again, not in celebration, in recognition. Outside, news crews scrambled. Producers called. Studio executives demanded statements. A dozen narratives were already being written. But inside that room, something quieter was happening. A man who had been forgotten was being trusted. After the event, Dean did not stay to speak to reporters. He did not take questions. He did not offer a single quote. He walked out a side door with Tommy. The night air was cool. The town was buzzing, but the street behind the Theater was empty. Tommy stopped beneath a street lamp. "You just changed your life," he said. Dean smiled gently. "No, I remembered it." Tommy looked down at the card in his hand. "I don't know if I can carry this." Dean met his eyes. "You already have." They stood in silence. Two old friends, no audience, no lights, no music, just the sound of a town, breathing behind them and somewhere far away. Hollywood was still trying to understand what had happened, but by the time it did, Dean Martin had already gone, where cameras could not follow, back into a life not built on applause, but on presence. And that was what truly shocked Hollywood.